Welcome to Spark Stories, a monthly program where we find out about the spark that inspired area leaders to step up and enact change to make Des Moines a better place to live. Today, we are with Dr. Richard Deming, who is the medical director of MercyOne's Richard Deming Cancer Center. He is known in the community for the compassionate care he provides cancer patients and their families, and has been recognized locally and nationally as a leader who is making a measurable difference in the world. Dr. Deming founded Above and Beyond Cancer, a nonprofit organization dedicated to elevating the lives of those touched by cancer. He has led cancer survivors on medical missions and inspirational mind, body, spirit pilgrimages to Mount Everest, Mount Kilimanjaro, and Machu Picchu. He is inspired by the courage and compassion of his patients and their families. His greatest ambition is to encourage others to pursue lives of meaning, purpose, passion, and compassion. Welcome, Dr. Deming. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, I feel honored to have you. I've had you on my list of people I want to interview since I started this program a year ago. So I'm really glad I finally connected with you. I've heard you share many stories of transformative experiences in your life, your mother's presence in your journey on becoming a doctor and the person you are today, a biking accident which brought you face to face with your own morality, and a 2001 Himalayan climbing expedition that you count as one of the most transformative experiences of your life. Can you talk about any transformative experiences in your life that turned you into or kind of developed you into the guiding light that you are for the community today?
Sure. I'm going to be 70 next year. So there's lots of things. You know, one of the things I guess would be the perspective that you don't always know that you are engaged in something that is going to be transformative at the time it's happening. And that part of the human condition, part of our job as a human being is to reflect on experiences that we have and to understand kind of how we got to where we are. And I would say that as a doctor taking care of patients, many who have incurable cancer, I encourage my patients to not only reflect on the past, but to what brings joy to your life today. And the answer to that question often requires reflecting back on what I have done that really does make a difference in my life. So to answer your question specifically, when I look back on events in my life that have been transformative, they would be, I would say, my upbringing and my whole schooling and the way I got engaged in high school in speech and theater and debate and public speaking, and without any understanding that that was going to have a major role to play in the way that I practice medicine, the way that I engage in conversation and what we could now call narrative medicine, and my understanding of the role of the humanities and the importance of literature and poetry and the communication, and that was going to be a major part of the way that I practice medicine. I think if you would have told me in high school, oh, you're going to be going to becoming a doctor, and it wasn't that I was thinking about it at that time, I would have thought, okay, I need to take more science, more math, and more biology, and the understanding I have now that a doctor taking care of a patient is a human being caring for a human being, and that's humanities. And the conversations that we have, the empathy, the trusting, caring relationship, that the act of being a doctor taking care of patients, as opposed to maybe a researcher in a lab, is all about the humanities, not to diminish the importance of math and science. But I didn't realize that part of my life, the humanities and the speech and the communication skills, was going to play a huge role in the way that I practice medicine and in my success as being a doctor caring for patients. So that would be one observation. You mentioned my mom's cancer diagnosis, and I've written about that. I would say that for decades, when somebody asked me why did I become a doctor, I never said, well, because my mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was in high school. I thought that it sounded kind of trite and that it didn't really seem genuine. But then when I look back on my career and I see how the twists and turns of going through college and then medical school and then how I got to cancer, it's hard not to believe that my mom, who died of cancer when I was a second year medical student, long before I had any real engagement in education around cancer, it's hard not to imagine her invisible hand on my back kind of helping guide me as I made decisions that eventually led to this career in cancer. So at the time that my mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was a junior in high school, no idea that was going to influence what happened in my life. When you asked me to reflect back on other things that kind of made big changes, when I was in medical school, I applied for and received a Navy scholarship. Now, I would tell you I was applying for a Navy scholarship for financial reasons so that my school would be paid for and I wouldn't go into debt. Little did I know that becoming a Navy doctor gave me these life experiences of living in many different parts of the country and the world, and also getting engaged in the physical activity of diving and taking care of very physically fit parachute jumping, scuba diving, bomb disposal, and that as I engaged in that opportunity of becoming more physically fit myself and physically active as I'm working out with my gang of divers that I'm taking care of, that would also open up this opportunity to become more engaged in physical activities that were challenging. So I never really participated much in sports when I was in high school. And the idea of honing in my physical skills and finding great joy and meaning in reaching above and beyond what I thought I could obtain by becoming a marathon runner or triathlete or mountain climbing, that appreciation for physical capabilities came about kind of serendipitously through my involvement in being in the Navy. Then you also mentioned, one of the Himalaya trips that I took. And that came out of when I came into practice here in Des Moines 33 years ago. So at that point in time, let's see, that was 1989. So I was 36 years old. And previously had been in school pretty much the whole time, whether it was high school, college, medical school, internship, residency, training in undersea medicine, that I didn't have much opportunity to really stop and think about what my life was going to be like. It was just one hurdle after another. But when I moved here, I remember seriously taking time to reflect, what is it that brings meaning and joy to my life? And I'm talking about a joy that is this deep-seated Aristotelian eudaimonia, that this joy comes from meaning. And so it's hard for me to separate a joyful life from a meaningful life. And I realized that there were several components that were important to me. One was being outdoors in nature was always felt important and bringing joy, engaging in physical activity that was challenging, and serving other people. So those are things that I found important, provided meaning and joy to my life. So as I got more engaged in mountain sports that gave you the opportunity to be in nature and to engage in physical activity, and then to also do it with a team of people with a common mission. That all came together with one of my first trips to the Himalayas in the year 2000, which had no altruistic purpose at all. It was not me taking any cancer patients. It was signing up for an expedition, but being out in the mountains and being with a group of people with a common mission. I knew when that trip was over that I really wanted to share that sort of experience with my patients and others who were important to me. So that particular trip transformed my life in many ways and allowed me to see and to actualize the bringing other people into a setting like that had so much meaning for me, and allowed me to share that with others and to become part of really my practice of medicine that over the years has morphed from just a profession to really being a ministry, to not totally understanding that to be a successful cancer doctor is not about killing cancer cells. It's about taking care of patients and their families, and to help them, not obviously not tell them what brings them joy or meaning, but to help them realize that searching and understanding what brings you joy is a part of being a human being. There's so many people that we all know that want to live forever, but don't have a clue what they could do this afternoon that would bring joy to their life or that would bring joy to anybody else's life. So really thinking about what is it in your life that brings you joy, and how can you then help spread the joy to others, is an important component of being a human being.
Thank you. That is a very thorough answer. I love the mention of high school and your high school classes, that you never expected to have such a huge kind of impact on your future life, and physical fitness being so important. As I mentioned in the intro, you have said that your greatest ambition is to encourage others to pursue lives of meaning, purpose, passion, and compassion. Can you remember when your focus shifted from improving your own life to dedicating your life to helping others? You mentioned you've always been, that serving others has always brought you joy, or that was one of the three components of a joyful life for you. So where did that come from, that joy in serving others?
Yeah, I would say it's not an either or, it's both and. So it doesn't mean that my serving others and my encouraging others to reach above and beyond what they think they can attain, that diminishes my pursuit to do that for myself. So I would say that that taking time to reflect on those principles that bring me joy, that many of those are universal. So again, I never want to tell someone what will bring them joy or what's meaningful for them. But in engaging in conversation with others, I am not the first person in the world to understand that being in nature and witnessing the change that happens with nature and the beauty of nature, that's a component of joy. That's fairly universal. Also, the idea of pursuing something that isn't just super easy, that there's a great joy that happens out of learning something new. I would say one of the first times I remember that I picked up this Juggling for the Klutz. It's this little book with 3 juggle balls, and you basically teach yourself how to juggle. And you can actually do it in about an hour. And the joy that comes from with an hour of dedicated practice to be able to juggle something, that still makes me smile. And just a small example, but anything that, whether it's pursuing the technical ability of skiing a difficult slope, that doesn't just happen. You fall down a lot, you dedicate, you work at it. And obviously the same things happens in the practice of surgery or the practice of any pursuit that requires practice and dedication. And ultimately the fulfillment that one gets, not out of making money for doing what you just learned how to do, but the act of learning something provides joy. So as I spent time thinking about what brings joy, then the next thing is, well, how do you live your life that you put more of that into your life? Whether it is challenging yourself to learn something new, pursuing it, and dedicating the amount of time. Because it's not going to happen if you just, sit on the couch. You're not going to engage in many activities that really provide deep-seated joy. So the idea also that serving others provides joy, I would say that comes from the act of practicing medicine. And as I realize that a conversation that I might have with someone who's going through a difficult time, that I feel fulfilled, that I have done something that has provided a meaningful impact to someone. And that brings me this sense of meaning and what I would call joy. The idea that I have some talents that have been useful and helped someone in a difficult time. So it is ironic, and it's not lost on me that, an hour-long conversation with someone who's been diagnosed with an incurable cancer, how could this horrible tragedy provide joy? I mean, it's not that the incurable cancer provides me joy. It's my ability to interact with someone going through a difficult time that helps them. That's the joy. But there is this irony. And I think just back a couple of months ago, a longtime patient of mine died of cancer on March 2nd. And he had been diagnosed with a brain tumor 10 years before. And during the course of his 10 years, was actively engaged with Above and Beyond Cancer in so many ways. And when he died, it was clear to his family and to everyone that the thing that caused his death had actually been the thing that provided him the most fulfilling aspects of his entire life. And that never know how we're going to react to some adversity in our life. And that the fulfillment and the growth that comes out of dealing with an adversity may end up being the most meaningful and, in fact, joyful part of our existence. And had we been given the chance, we would have passed it up. We would have said, no, thank you. I do not want that sort of difficulty in my life. I'll just pass it up. Thank you. And in reality, we don't usually have a choice. And given the opportunity, we often would make a bad choice. And so once you understand that these difficult things that we face in life do provide ultimately meaning and fulfillment, sometimes we're willing to actually intentionally put a mountain in our pathway. Physically, the easy thing would be to sit on a couch, but that's not going to provide you much fulfillment in your life. And putting a mountain in your pathway and the challenge that represents is fulfilling and ultimately provides meaning and joy.
As many people have said, you bring a lot of wisdom to every conversation you have. So yeah, that's amazing to reflect on. That challenge actually leads to fulfillment oftentimes. You recently spoke at the Des Moines Public Library's AVID series and shared the story of your book, Above and Beyond Cancer, which I've been reading, and I can't say enough good things about it, about the book. You mentioned in the introduction that the book will take you to every dimension of what it means to be human and what it means to live in a world both fraught with suffering and lit with joy. No cancer diagnosis required. Can you talk about your own book and any others which have been particularly influential for you along the way?
So thank you for your comments about my book. My book wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Drake Community Press. So I've always thought that I would like to write a book, but it would still be just notes piled up on a desk somewhere if it weren't for the writing experience that we did with Drake Community Press. So Drake Community Press works with a nonprofit organization every 2 years to not just create a book, but to create a curriculum at Drake University and to engage students. So for our purposes, the not-for-profit was above and beyond cancer. And there were many classes, about 14 different classes taught throughout the university that had something to do with cancer. So obviously the health sciences, but also actuarial sciences, but also philosophy. There was a course on the philosophy of hope. There were literature courses and English courses and writing courses and courses in sociology and social determinants of health. So many courses that were developed by professors at Drake over a 2-year period that had this cancer connection. And then Carol Spalding Cruz, who's the English professor and the director of Drake Community Press, she did a collaborative writing class that I helped participate in and co-taught, if you will. And that included students that wanted to be part of the writing experience. So out of that, I wrote basically what I thought was this book about the philosophical journey, each chapter, and even working with the students on what the chapters were going to be and what we were going to talk about as a journey through cancer, the surprise of being diagnosed with cancer, the impact that it has, the difficulty, the pain, the sorrow, but also the joy and the acceptance and the importance of family. All of those became chapters. So as I wrote each chapter, a group of the Drake students edited my writing, but then another group of Drake students went through all of the essays that my patients had written through the years, but also interviewed some of my patients and then chose snippets of my patients' experience that matched the theme of each chapter. And then we also had thousands of photographs from our journeys where I've taken cancer patients on journeys around the world. And those photographs, another group of students went through and chose photographs that matched the theme of each chapter. And then after we were done with that semester of doing the writing and choosing the snippets from the patients and the photographs, then it all got turned over the next semester to the Drake undergrad publishing class. And they got this tremendous assignment. Their whole semester was to put the book together, to choose what was going to be the size and shape of the book, what was going to be the paper, what was going to be the font, the layout. And by the time it got done, I mean, my little thought that I thought that I was going to have this little philosophical book turns into what looks like a coffee table photography book that is just amazingly beautiful. Senator Harkin wrote the foreword, and it really is a tribute to the collaboration of not just my writing, but the Drake students who did the interviews of the students and the wonderful, beautiful photography by Dylan Huey that makes this book pretty special. The fact that it was done with Drake over a 2-year period, semester by semester by semester, we knew it was going to get done. And so there was no just sitting around waiting for it to happen. You had to make it happen. Deadlines are important things in getting something done. And had it been up to me to just sit and sort of write a book and then find a publisher, I don't think it ever would have gotten written. So this was a wonderful writing experience, and it's resulted in a book that I'm very proud of because it's a collaboration with many people. You asked me about books that are important to me. I just got back last week. I took a group of 22 cancer survivors and caregivers up to Wyoming, and we camped for a week and climbed and hiked and engaged in conversation about meaning and purpose and joy. And we talked about books. And I would say there's 3 books that come to mind that I would recommend to anyone. Number one is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So that is a beautiful small book. It's in two parts. The first part is Viktor Frankl's experience, his personal experience as a Jew in a concentration camp in World War II, and sort of the grim and gritty of that. But the second part is this reflection on how he observed that those individuals going through this very difficult experience who could find meaning in their life had a better outcome, and the role that adversity can play in finding meaning, and that searching for one's meaning is part of the human condition. So you've already heard me kind of give my spin of that, and that is really kind of the essence of this book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a book that everybody should read every couple of years to really think about what the human condition is, and that finding meaning in one's life is an important part of being a human being. Number two, a beautiful book that came out about 5 years ago. It's called The Book of Joy, and it's by the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, and Doug Abrams. So Doug Abrams really brought the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu together. The two of them did not write anything. They had 5 days of conversation that was recorded, both video and audio. And then Doug Abrams kind of weaves their conversation together on how do you find joy in life. And again, both Desmond Tutu, who went through apartheid, and the Dalai Lama, who was exiled from his country. I mean, both. And at the point the book is being written, Desmond Tutu also has stage 4 cancer, living with incurable cancer. And it is this conversation where they are both full of joy. One's 80, one's 85, and have had this life with lots of sorrow, suffering, and adversity, but yet reflecting on how do you find joy in life. And ultimately, the same sort of thing. It's joy comes from understanding and meaning and reflecting and gratitude and appreciation and serving other people. And it's not a joyful life. It's not a life that skirts difficulty or skirts sorrow. Sorrow and difficulty are inherent in a joyful life. So a beautiful book, The Book of Joy, by the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, and Doug Abrams. And the third one would be a book that I carry with me on all of our journeys. It's written by John O'Donohue, and it's called To Bless the Space Between Us. And it's really a book of blessings. So John O'Donohue was an Irish priest. He left the priesthood for the love of a woman. He continued to write these beautiful spiritual blessings that are a combination of poetry and prayer. He died unexpectedly and suddenly at age 52, and the book was actually published posthumously, and it's a blessing for every possible occasion. And when I take cancer survivors on journeys, we begin every morning with one of his blessings as a reflection to sort of set our intention for the day. And it's a beautiful book, and I rely on it often as introductions to talks, as giving a toast for a birthday or a wedding or a new child, or even to read blessings about approaching death to a patient of mine who might be in the hospital, during the last hours of his or her life. There's beautiful blessings about every possible human condition.
Thank you for sharing those 3 wonderful books to keep on hand and refer back to for more wisdom. Is there anything else you would like to share?
I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
I know nothing in particular. I appreciate your questions and my allowing me to just ramble a bit.
Well, Dr. Deming, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I hope that everyone enjoyed hearing your Spark story as much as I did. To learn more about Spark Stories, please check out our website and be sure to tune in next month for another episode.